Hello, my name is Phil. Let's talk about movies.
I'm a bit out of touch, so it might take me a while to get back used to it, but
it feels very surreal.
Yes.
It feels good, but surreal.
I mean, this isn't socially distanced.
I know, yeah, without masks on.
But I trust you.
Yeah. We're both double jabbed. It's
Exactly.
fine, everything's fine. Well, mind you, with all the stats at the moment, who knows whether that's fine or not, probably isn't, but we've got to just keep on going.
Yeah.
Got to say hello to the guys at this company, which you actually highlighted as we walked into Pitch House Central yesterday.
Yeah, so they had this big activation for this company called Argo, and I thought it was like maybe a film distribution company, or well, it is kind of, but
yeah.
And I got looking into it a little bit more before we went into the press pen, and it turns out it's a new streaming platform for short films, which I have been saying we've needed in a long time, because Phil and I see so many short films and we love them, and some of them are so good, but then after they do the film festival circuit, they kind of just disappear.
And people always ask where they can see them as well, and we never know, because they're all over the place. There should be one place where you can see a lot of short films.
And it's not like, you know, you can download short films, and I mean, some of them end up on YouTube, a lot of them end up on Vimeo, which doesn't quite have that penetration that it should. So yeah, I'm excited to check it out.
Well, it's great. I mean, there should be one place that people can push short films to.
Yeah.
And so you'll find it here. Almost like Netflix, you know, like you've got this streaming platform.
That's what we wanted.
It's dedicated to short films. And also short films before, we've talked about this when we've covered stuff at Flare or London Film Festival. There needs to be a prominence, because, you know, we've praised these films before, and now is the time to concentrate on it more.
I'm surprised, and I'll say this again, that short films haven't had a real resurgence, because we're so into bite-sized content these days. It's all about small chunks of content on the go. Maybe this Argo can make it happen. So
Argo.
We're gonna check it out. We're definitely gonna check it out.
Yeah, because we spoke to, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a really nice guy, and he gave us a cap. You haven't got yours with you.
No, because I don't wear caps, but I like it.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were there for well, there was a screening, but we didn't go to the screening because we saw a screener online of this film called Censor, which is a horror film that everybody is talking about. And we met the director and the writer, who was Prano Bailey-Bond, and also the main star, Niamh Algar.
I think the director liked you, Phil. I think she could have chatted to you all night.
Yeah, I could have chatted to her all night, because she talked about all her favourite horror films.
I think, like, you two are two peas in a pod.
Absolutely. But she's 39, I'm a little bit older, but she, of course, grew up with horrors just like I did. I was going to ask you about video nasties, because video nasties in this country, because this film's all about video nasties, we'll come onto the story in a moment. But what was it like in terms of American video nasties? Because I know that a lot of those did carry over to UK and what we were seeing here in this country, but I think in this country particularly, it was a really big thing in the mid-80s, early to mid-80s.
I think in America, I wouldn't say it was a big thing, but it was, you know, when the video store was a thing, you know, where you go and rent videos, and, you know,
VHS.
Yeah, and a lot of small independent video stores had a lot of different content that you wouldn't see in Blockbuster. So they'd end up there, and I kind of remember a lot of people talking about, like, you know, these films where people die and it's captured in real life. I can't remember what the name of it's called, but, you know, those would be like, people would chatter about it. And
like snuff movies.
Yeah, and, you know, and you'd always hear about them, but they would be sort of in the small independent cult video stores, you know. So they never really penetrated the mainstream. But I'm all about that word penetrated today.
I know. I was just thinking that. I didn't want to snigger like a boy at the back of the classroom, but it did cross my mind.
We've been in lockdown forever. You know, I was more like seeking out like the gay and lesbian films, you know, in the independent film shops, and because I was more into those stories. But I had some friends who were like all about those moments of death videos, and they thought it was fascinating. And
Cannibal Holocaust, was it?
I don't know,
because that was one of the films that Prano mentioned.
Or Faces of Death or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, there were loads of them. She said there were 72 films that were banned on the banned list, because that's pretty much what it was all about. The 80s was that all these films were kind of under the shelf. You know, all these like video stores were renting them out, but they probably shouldn't have been. Some were banned, some weren't.
Yeah.
But video, films like The Evil Dead, they went on to become big classic cult favourites, but then commercial favourites.
Yeah.
So eventually, the
I
laws
saw The Evil Dead
changed.
in a movie theater with my dad. So do you think, and this is just an ethical question, do you think that these films should have the right to exist?
I do. I mean, I understand the problems. It's like Prano was saying about, Cannibal Holocaust there were a lot of problems with the depiction of human violence, but also animal mistreatment as well, and he was prosecuted, the director, the filmmaker that made that film. So I think you can cross that line, and a lot of filmmakers do cross that line, but I think you can still see a horror film as a work of art and a really powerful piece of cinema.
Yeah.
So I think it's really difficult, because obviously there are quite a few films that do overstep that boundary in terms of taste, for sure.
Yeah. Like for me too, I can't watch any of those Saw films or torture porn films. I just can't. Yeah, I mean, I like classic horror, like Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers.
Where it's a bit more comic book.
Well, you would say that.
Well, I mean, when you compare it to films like Cannibal Holocaust or even films like Martyrs, those are the really brutal films.
I like the jump scares, and I like the sense of, the final girls and who's going to survive and persevere at the end. And I love the Scream movies, and I can't wait for Scream 5 to come out.
They're more of a roller coaster horror.
Yeah, I like those. Final Destination.
See, I like those too.
Give me those all day, but the torture porn stuff's a bit too much for me.
Well, I agree with you, because I do enjoy films like Scream, and obviously Halloween, got to get it in there because it is my favourite film of all time. I've mentioned it quite a few times. Are you counting?
I will be there with you, Phil. Watch Halloween Kills.
Come on, only a couple more weeks to go. A few more weeks. But yeah, I can appreciate the other types of more brutal horror because of the effect that they have on you.
Yeah.
Because I've seen so many films that do really genuinely disturb me, and I quite like that because it makes you feel alive watching these films. I mean, they're not to everybody's taste. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, but when you compare it, like, when I asked the question, do these films deserve to exist? Like, there are like gay and lesbian films that show like real, penetrative sex.
Here we go again. Get that word in.
And some people some censors might find that a bit much, but is it real life? Yes. Does it have the right to exist? I think it does.
Does it feel more authentic?
Yes.
And that's the argument that I always have with people about horror films, because if it feels brutal and it feels disturbing, then obviously that's had an effect on you, hasn't it? It's made you think, wow, that feels really realistic.
Yeah.
And I think, some horrors do feel.
And as much as I don't like watching it, these things come from a place of realness, whether it's been depicted in your mind, whether it was a crime story about it. Is it true? Maybe some guy ate someone's face off. Who knows? So
it's a genuine fear, isn't it?
It's come from a place of truth more than anything, and maybe I think they do have the right to exist. I just wouldn't go rent it actively to watch. It's
an interesting debate, and I think that's why I appreciated Censor so much, because I thought it was a really refreshing story, and also the fact that this is about a censor who's Enid, who's played by Niamh.
She was brilliant.
Niamh Algar, was so really good. And I said to her last night when we saw them on the red carpet, I said it must have been a really exhausting performance, because you don't see her having a laugh, because it's not the kind of film that where the character is having a laugh, because she plays a censor. She's going through that really tough job of censoring films and analysing horror films, and some are really disturbing and disgusting. But I just like the fact that it focused on her and her mental well-being, because you see this woman just being kind of wrung out almost. And I thought that was a really interesting story.
I would kind of like to hear what a real censor, what their kind of day-to-day life, because it seemed like these people were more focused on the video nasties than anything else. But a censor could watch Austin Powers and then Deranged all in the same sitting,
serious PTSD.
Yeah. So.
But you do wonder, you wonder whether it's having a mental impact on these people when they're watching these films, because obviously they have to analyse it to such an extent. But back in the 80s, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Mary Whitehouse. Here in the UK, we had Mary Whitehouse, one of the campaigners of many that campaigned against these type of films, these horror films that Enid is watching and censoring.
Sorry, I can't search by topic.
Okay. Yeah, it's all to do with her. It's obviously based in 1985, and I just loved the feel of the film because it did feel genuinely like it was in the mid-80s.
Oh, speaking of that, Phil, the opening credits, what were the BFI?
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
like that, was that like really what it was like back
That
then?
was really what it was
that
like.
That was really well done. I was quite impressed with that.
The opening credits were actually stylized in the way that they would have been back in the 80s. And
Yeah.
you know, you have the glitchy effects or the kind of like fuzzy screen effects.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you think about VHS tapes as well, I mean, you always see the lines across the across the screen when you're watching it. So it had all that. It had a really good attention to detail, I thought. But you haven't seen the whole film yet.
I've seen half of it
Yeah.
so far. I had to kind of pause it for a bit to gather myself.
I'd love to find out what you thought about the whole film as a whole, because obviously the ending is one of those endings, without spoiling it for people that haven't seen the film, is going to divide people. I personally loved it because I thought it was a little bit comical as well, because it almost had its tongue in its cheek the way that it played out at the end, and I thought it was nicely tied up because you saw some sinister elements, but it had a bit of a smile on its face at the end.
Ooh.
And I like that because it was quite a dark comedy in parts of it, not all the way through, but I think it definitely had that British dark comedy feel about it, like Revenge or something else.
I quite didn't get to the dark comedy
Right.
yet. I don't think so.
Because there's not a lot of it.
It was pretty grim up until the middle, I think. But I did really appreciate, like you said, the attention to detail was amazing. It felt like I was watching something straight out of the 80s.
Yeah.
It had that 80s sort of gloss.
When they're on the
over it,
train as well, and the train seats are just like I remember in the 80s.
People smoking.
Yeah, people smoking indoors, you know, at work. I mean, you obviously don't get that now, so it does feel like a lifetime ago. In a way, it was, I suppose, 30, 40
Did
years
like
ago.
did it really like make the headlines over here, like the video nasties?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, it was a
Okay.
massive thing. I mean,
Okay.
it was very controversial because, you know, I grew up with horror films. I remember seeing Halloween at the age of, I don't know, 8 or 9. That's not obviously a video nasty as such, but I remember seeing The Evil Dead and being terrified by that, even though it is a comedy as well. But at that age, I found it horrific. But equally, I loved it as well because I was fascinated by horror. But there were a lot of films that I did see, like I'll name one, which is called Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, which has changed its title to Nightmare now. It's changed. I remember seeing that at the age of, I don't know, 9 or 10. My parents were quite laid back about me watching horror. I don't think it's had any effect on me. Well, not that I know of.
It's just turned you into a deranged Halloween fan.
Yeah. But, I really love this, and I think it's going to be one of these films that a lot of horror fans who remember that era, who grew up with that era, and are really fond of that style of 80s horror film, I think they'll see the nods, you know, the tributes to those old classics. Those classic video nasties, if we're allowed to kind of bunch those words into the same term. I don't know. I guess a lot of video nasties have turned into classics because they become cult classics.
Well, you know, when you compare it to what's on regular network TV these days, there's some pretty gruesome stuff. I mean, I watched an episode of American Horror Story the other night that I was like, whoa, that's a bit much.
Well, you're right, because TV, I think even TV productions now have become really violent. I mean, look at the horror trilogy recently on Netflix. That was quite...
Oh, Fear Street?
Yeah. That was quite gory for a teen horror movie.
Yeah. I was, we could do a whole review on that, but I was like, oh, it's a rip-off of Scream. Oh, it's a rip-off of Friday the 13th.
Everything is, though, isn't it?
I mean, those are the classics. That's the baseline.
Yeah.
That's the bar, so...
I don't know if you got as far as seeing one of the characters in Censor, which, admittedly, she hasn't got a massive part, but... Felicity Montague, I don't know if you know her, she's in Alan Partridge. She plays the PA.
No.
She plays a lot of comedy roles,
Okay.
but she's in this film and she's brilliant. She's obviously working with Enid, the censor.
So after this, we're going to sit down and I'll finish the film.
I think we should, yeah, because we need to come back, we need to revisit it, because I'd love to hear what you think about the whole thing as a whole. But yeah, to be continued. Censor, I loved it. I'm going to give it 4 stars.
4 stars.
Obviously, we'll come back and see what you thought.
That is very high regard for you, Phil. I love
Very
that.
memorable.
You know, even though I haven't seen the whole film, I've enjoyed our discussion
Yeah.
about it. So it just brings a lot of points to mind. So I guess, you know, if you're one of those people that likes to intellectualize about film and its effects.
I love talking about horror, and I like to hear what people think when they're not necessarily horror fans as well, because my other half hates horror, but he does like a lot of psychological horror stroke thrillers. I mean, I'm a bit naughty because I always say to him, "Oh, we've got this thriller to watch," and he knows that it's not a thriller. He knows it's a horror, but I try and kind of worm it in. Yeah. So yeah, let us know what you think. If you're going to see Censor, if you have already, give us a thumbs up as well. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.